Now, it's always great to see a video game introduce a truly groundbreaking mechanic, one that fundamentally reinvents how we play a certain type of game and is then endlessly imitated by genre successes. But not all mechanics are created equal, and while players will never forget a game that introduces a truly unique feature, often a game implements mechanics that are, well, fundamentally pointless. So let's take a look at them. As I'm Jules, this is WhatCulture.com, and these are 10 more pointless video game mechanics nobody used. Number 10. Blind Fire, Call of Duty Vanguard. The latest entry into the Call of Duty franchise, Vanguard confirmed the series' ongoing struggle to continually innovate its well-trod shooter gameplay, as players en masse mocked its inclusion of a totally random blind fire combat mechanic. Now, in theory, blind fire allowed players to shoot indiscriminately into the open without revealing themselves, which is a seemingly strategic combat option to help players fend off enemies in a pinch, right? Except upon the game's launch, players took to social media to question why Sledgehammer bothered even including it, given how few opportunities there are for players to use it in a practical way in both the single-player campaign and multiplayer suite. More to the point, even when it is a viable option, it's fiddly and awkward enough that you'll probably end up just getting killed by an enemy who isn't messing around with blind fire. Considering how little blind fire even figures in the game, you couldn't be blamed for spending dozens of hours playing Vanguard without even realizing that it was actually a feature. Number 9. Vehicles, Saints Row 4. While the sheer freedom-loving insanity of Saints Row's sandbox gameplay is very much the point, by giving players a bevy of superpowers from incredibly early on in the fourth game, namely super speed and super jump, developers' volition basically made vehicles completely and utterly pointless. Now, this isn't to say that the wish fulfillment aspect of the various superpowers isn't worth it, but in a franchise where cars have traditionally played a major role, the power's generous capabilities trivialize driving to the extent of being basically redundant. Why get into a car when you can just sprint, jump, and glide to your target instead and save yourself a ton of time by not having to deal with traffic? Now, while cars are still in the game for those who want to use them, they're effectively rendered obsolete by the infinitely superior traversal options that you have at your disposal that come within the first hour of Saints Row 4. Number 8. Jumping, Ni no Kuni, Wrath of the White Witch. As wonderful a game as the Studio Ghibli-inspired Ni no Kuni Wrath of the White Witch is, there's so little utility to the Jumping Jack ability that the game itself even admits it. Jumping Jack is one of the first abilities that you unlock in the game, and it allows you to jump while running, which serves no major practical purpose within the gameplay itself given the lack of platforming elements. Hilariously, the game even describes it as not very useful, but a whole lot of fun. While Jumping Jack technically serves a tiny practical purpose by giving you a fractional speed boost while moving and letting you grab the floating golden orbs faster during combat, these fringe advantages really aren't enough to make the jump seem worthwhile to about 99.8% of players. Unlike most of the pointless mechanics on this list though, at least it is bloody adorable to look at and beautifully animated to boot. If you're going to be useless, you might as well look good doing it, right? Number 7. Horses, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. Here's a possibly controversial choice with The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild's horses. Now, Breath of the Wild is a great game that, above all else, promotes player freedom to go about Link's adventure however you desire. And while a horse might sound like a useful vehicle in theory, given the game's emphasis on vertical traversal, it's easy to go most of the adventure without using them much at all. This isn't one of those open world games where you're endlessly riding around long, winding paths on your way to the next objectives, as there's so much for the player to see and do at any given opportunity that you just be constantly hopping off your steed anyway. Plus, without the ability to quickly summon horses from anywhere on the map, it can feel a bit like busy work to even get them into your vicinity at all. Unless they're needed for a quest, Breath of the Wild's horses don't really serve much of a purpose, especially if you max out your stamina and can just sprint everywhere. While some might enjoy riding horses for the sheer sake of the act itself, the mechanic doesn't present the discernible gameplay advantage that you'd actually expect. Number 6. The Turn On, Turn Off feature, The Secret of Monkey Island. Okay, so this one is admittedly pretty funny. The original version of The Secret of Monkey Island featured a bevy of on-screen options for player interaction, which players will of course need to use throughout the game in various contexts, except that is for the turn on and turn off commands, which players are never required to use throughout the entire game, especially with the use function being able to turn objects on and off. The reason for this is actually quite hilarious, as the game was created using LucasArts' bespoke script creation utility for Maniac Mansion, or SCUM engine, which had been used to develop Indiana Jones and The Last Crusade, the graphic adventure, the year before. And so, rather than tinker with the engine, LucasArts decided to just import the interface and command system wholesale, no matter the fact that Secret of Monkey Island had no practical use for the turn on and off functionality. The game's success evidently prompted the company to give the engine a redesign for the sequel, though, as Monkey Island 2 LeChuck's Revenge lacked the same rather pointless mechanic. Number 5. Melee Attacks, Doom Eternal. In the vast majority of FPS games, the most basic melee option isn't exactly that strong, but it will at least allow you to get a temporary stagger or incapacitate an enemy for long enough to find your footing. But not, apparently, in Doom Eternal. Here, the base melee attack is so hilariously underpowered as to be functionally pointless, administering close to 0 damage, enough that staggering even the most rudimentary zombie into a glory kill state takes around 100 hits. Not exactly ideal in a tight spot then. It's an especially odd choice, as melee was actually pretty decent in Doom 2016, yet received an inexplicable nerf in this sequel. Perhaps this was an attempt to further highlight the power of the new Blood Punch melee ability, but considering that Doom Eternal is already a highly challenging game, depowering a combat skill that was previously useful in a desperate moment made no sense whatsoever. Number 4. Magic Hands, Sonic Adventure 2. Mechanics don't come a whole lot more pointless than Sonic Adventure 2's Magic Hands ability, which allows Sonic to shrink and trap enemies within a small sphere, which can then be thrown at other obstacles. It's not as cool as it sounds, honestly, the main issue being that using Magic Hands grinds gameplay to a dreadful halt, and is so much slower than just using Sonic's more conventional attacks to subdue the enemy. In a series that's all about go in fast, the Magic Hands feel woefully out of place, like a half-formed feature that somehow just slipped through the QA process during development. Combine its sheer impracticability with the fact that unlocking it also is easily missed by players in the first place, and you have a mechanic that's as helpful as a chocolate teapot, and therefore used by basically nobody. Number 3. Break Free, Friday the 13th, the game. Friday the 13th, the game may not be the most mechanically robust title on the market, but even for its own roughshod standards, the Break Free feature definitely pissed a lot of players off. Now, in theory, the mechanic allows those playing as hapless camp counselors to break from Jason Voorhees' grip once he attacks, but in reality, Jason is so freakishly overpowered that it's damn near impossible to actually escape his grasp unless you've got a pocket knife in your possession. Once anyone playing as Jason has grabbed a counselor, all they need to do is press a single button to finish them off, ensuring those who are playing as the counselors have basically no chance to escape. Balancing multiplayer games is definitely hard for sure, but in tipping the scales so aggressively in Jason's favor, as suits his character admittedly, the developers may as well just made his grab an insta-kill in of itself. If they really wanted the break-free mechanic to be worthwhile, then Jason desperately needed a cooldown on his brutal finishing moves. Number 2. Smoking, Vanquish. Now, while I'm pretty sure that everybody tried out Vanquish's admittedly hilarious smoking mechanic at least once, that was probably about it. And while I hate ragging on Vanquish because it is my all-time greatest 6 out of 10 game that is a true 10 out of 10 game, even I have to admit I basically only used it enough to get the achievement. But yes, Platinum Games' cult classic third-person shooter literally has a button dedicated to lighting up a cigarette while in cover during combat. Now, the game tells you that it's useful in that you can throw it over the barricade and the enemies will target it because they believe it to be a heat signature of a human and they are dumb robots. But the problem is that it never distracts them for that long. You can run out of cigarettes and you might as well just shoot them because it's far easier. It's amusing all the same though, and we have to admit that is pretty much Platinum Games' entire MO for building games. Is it silly? Yes, let's make it. And number 1, the GUMMI ship, Kingdom Hearts. By far the most divisive aspect of the Kingdom Hearts games is the requirement to pilot a GUMMI ship in order to travel between worlds. Beyond padding out the gameplay, these sections were effectively pointless, nothing more than a tedious on-rail shooting sequence that nobody asked for. Sadly, there's no way to avoid using the GUMMI ship in the 3 Kingdom Hearts games, though it's safe to say that most players didn't spend any more time in them than they utterly needed to, and certainly avoided wasting time with optional GUMMI side content and upgrades. While Square Enix admittedly made these sections far more tolerable in the 2nd and 3rd game, they still don't suit the series' design philosophy overall. Why force us through these painfully bland time filler segments in a series of games whose appeal lies in exploring magical worlds filled with iconic Disney and Square Enix characters? After all, in a franchise with a loose at best grasp of its own internal logic, would anyone have cared if Sora and company just magically warped their way between worlds? I'll answer that for you. Not a damn person would. And there we go, my friends. Those were 10 more pointless video game mechanics nobody used. I hope that you enjoyed that, and please let me know what you thought about it down in the comment section below. As always, I've been Jules. You can go follow me over on Twitter at RetroJ with a 0, or you can do the same over on Instagram, RetroJ, but the O is a 0. But before I go, I just want to say one thing. Hope you're treating yourself well, my friend, with love and respect, because you deserve all of the best things in life, all right? And do not let anything or anyone else tell you otherwise. You're a massive ledge. Now go out there and absolutely smash it today. I believe in you. As always, I've been Jules. You have been awesome. Never forget that. And I'll speak to you soon. Bye.